The May Uprising took place in Dresden, Kingdom of Saxony in 1849. It was one of the last of the series of events known as the Revolutions of 1848. Events leading to the May Uprising. In the German states, revolutions began in March 1848, starting in Berlin and spreading across the other states which now make up Germany. The heart of the revolutions was in Frankfurt, where the newly formed National Assembly, the Frankfurt Parliament, met in St. Paul's Church from May 1848, calling for a constitutional monarchy to rule a new, united German nation. To form the assembly, near-democratic elections had taken place across the German states. The majority of the members were Saxon Democrats. On the 28th of March 1849, the assembly passed the First Reichsverfassung for Germany, and in April 1849, Friedrich Wilhelm IV of Prussia was offered the crown. Despite its apparent progress, the National Assembly really depended upon the cooperation of the old leaders and emperor. This became all too clear when Friedrich Wilhelm IV refused to accept the crown in disgust. Movements sprang up across the German states to force through the new constitution, but the National Assembly disintegrated. In Saxony, Frederick Augustus II had never recognized the constitution and now also disbanded the Saxon parliament. In Württemberg, the more radical elements of the National Assembly formed the Rump parliament in Stuttgart, which was defeated by Prussian troops. At the same time, the people of Saxony began to react to the repression of the democratic movement. The May Uprising began. The uprising. At first, the Saxon town councillors attempted to persuade Frederick Augustus II to accept the constitution in public speeches. The municipal guards who should have controlled them were on the side and made an address to the king, also calling for acceptance of the constitution. The king was unyielding, however, and called them to order. This led to further unrest, which in turn caused the king to bring in Prussian troops. The situation exploded. On the 3rd of May 1849, the municipal guards were told to go home, but the town councillors organized them into defensive units to stop expected Prussian intervention. As the people's anger grew, the government withdrew into the castle and the armory, protected by Saxon troops. The municipal guards were undecided whether or not to support the people, who threatened to use explosives to get the government out. In response, the Saxon troops fired on the crowd. Within hours the town was in chaos, with 108 barricades erected. In the early hours of the 4th of May 1849, the king and his ministers managed to escape and fled to the fortress of Königstein. 3 members of the dissolved Democratic Parliament now became the leaders of the revolution. Samuel Tschirner, Karl Gotthelf Dott and Otto Leonhard Hübner formed a provisional government. Their aim was to force the acceptance of the constitution. Tschirner called in another member, Alexander Ainse, to organize fighting and bring in more communal guards and volunteers from outside Dresden. Reinforcements joined the revolutionaries from as far away as Chemnitz, Zwickau, and Marienburg, and the struggle grew extremely violent. The Saxon troops were also backed up by arriving Prussian soldiers. They planned to encircle the rebels and corner them on the Altmarkt, but the number of barricades meant they had to fight for every street, even in the houses. Recent studies place the number of revolutionaries at around 3,000, compared with 5,000 government troops from Saxony and Prussia. Apart from being outnumbered, the rebels were also untrained in battle, disorganized and lacked weapons, so they stood no chance of success. On the 9th of May the majority were forced to flee. Most of the others gave up, and the rest were tracked down to the Frauenkirche and arrested. Prominent figures amongst the revolutionaries. Before the events of May 1849, Dresden was already known as a cultural center for liberals and Democrats. The anarchist Dresdner Zeitung newspaper was partly edited by the music director August Rockel and contained articles by Mikhail Bakunin, who came to Dresden in March 1849. The Saxon government later accused Bakunin of being the revolutionaries' ringleader, although this is unlikely to have been the case. Rockel also published the popular democratic newspaper Volksblätter. Richard Wagner, the composer, at the time Royal Saxon court conductor, had been inspired by the revolutionary spirit since 1848 and was befriended by Rockel and Bakunin. He wrote passionate articles in the Volksblätter inciting people to revolt, and when fighting broke out he took a very active part in it, making hand grenades and standing as a lookout at the top of the Frauenkirche. The architect Gottfried Semper was until 1849 less politically active, but had made known his democratic beliefs and felt compelled to stand up for them, also taking a lead role on the barricades. Others on the barricades included Pauline Wunderlich, Gustav Züner, Ludwig Wittig, the actress and singer Wilhelmine Schroeder de Vries supported the uprising. Results of the uprising. The struggle left some Dresden buildings in ruins. The old opera, 2 sides of the Zwinger, and 6 houses were burned down. The number of dead rebels is uncertain, but in 1995 the figure was estimated at around 200. 8 Saxon and 23 Prussian soldiers died. The Saxon government arrested Bakunin and Rockel in Chemnitz, but Schirner, Hubner and Todt escaped. Semper and Wagner were on the government's wanted list, but also escaped to Zurich, where Wagner remained. From 1849 the German states saw a sharp rise in emigration as thousands deserted the homeland for political reasons, many of them artists, writers and other well-educated, prominent members of society. The revolution had a slight effect on the political system, in that the nobility lost some of its power in the lower house, but otherwise was a complete failure.